are not a target.
Thorne is the Melbourne branch organiser and the national organiser for the Freedom Socialist Party and the managing editor of the Freedom Socialist Organiser. Alison is a founding member of the Indigenous Social Justice Association, NAM, a member of the Community and Public Sector Union, and she leads the work of both FSP and its sister organisation Radical Women. Alison is also well known and organising within the LGBTQIA+ movement. So without further ado, Alison.
Thank you. It's really, really great to be here in Boorloo, Perth, on the beautiful unceded lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And those of us in the Freedom Socialist Party not only pay respects to First Nations elders, but we pledge to continue our organising with both elders and young warriors as accomplices in the fight for truth-telling and for self-determination. What my talk today is going to focus on is what it will take to build socialism in our times. And I'm really keen for us to have a discussion and exchange. I've spent all of my adult life organising as a committed, revolutionary socialist feminist. And one thing is clear: humanity is crying out for change. And the need for socialism has never been more urgent than it is at the moment. We're living in a deeply unequal world where goods and services are produced by the working class majority, but the rewards go overwhelmingly to a tiny elite. Let's just look at one or two facts. The richest 1.5% in the world own more than half of the world's wealth. When we think about it, that is really obscene. It's also a world teetering on the precipice of environmental collapse. The climate is warming and extreme weather events, devastating droughts and destructive floods are occurring more and more regularly. Bushfires are ever more intense, and science shows us that the last 3 years have been the hottest on record. We've really got no time to waste. In a world where access to healthcare is more precarious, patents are used to prevent mass access to life-saving drugs. Support for people with disability is being slashed, all while military spending continues to balloon. Today, we also live in a world dominated by imperialism. And as Lenin, Russian revolutionary leader, explained, imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. When finance capital, the banks and the stock markets have come to dominate the economy. In this late stage of capitalism, there's a never-ending struggle against the various imperialists and a drive to war. What we're witnessing today is the ongoing struggles among imperialist countries. These struggles have reached a qualitatively different stage. The rivalries are sharper. The aim of Trump's war in Iran, which makes no doubt is far from over, is for US imperialism, which is being challenged like never before, to maintain control of trade routes, markets, oil, and other resources. And they're doing this in a bid to outcompete rivals, China and Russia. So this is a world which is riddled with fault lines and contradictions, a world where the capitalist class uses toxic sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism and xenophobia to distract from the real source of our problems and to sow divisions and keep the working class squabbling amongst ourselves. But there's good news. The good news is it need not be like this, because we actually live in a world of plenty. Plus, the profit system has brought the whole world together into an international economy and raised the level of productivity exponentially. The objective prerequisites for worldwide socialism now actually exist. There's enough food for every person. There are enough material resources and scientific knowledge to provide high quality healthcare for everyone. No one needs to be homeless. No one needs to lack running water and electricity. All that is required is to get the exploitation and private profiteering out of the economy and replace this with real economic and political democracy. Imagine that. Needed is collective public ownership of all major corporations, industry, banks and insurance companies, agribusiness, transportation, the media, schools and medical facilities. Add to this a planned economy where the decision making is in the hands of workers. Imagine that. Sounds fabulous? Bring it on. But before getting on to the how, I'd just like to give a brief recap of the decades that actually led to where we find ourselves today, because that is really important. World War II brought deep and lasting changes to the globe. It enabled global capital to bounce back from the Great Depression, and the US emerged dominant. At the same time, the USSR developed into the world's second great superpower, providing a vital counterweight to imperialism. But in the post-war period, the working class in advanced capitalist countries could actually win reforms. Reforms such as increased regulation and improved social welfare. The capitalist class, eager to stave off the threat of revolt, responded to working class anger with concessions. This was definitely the case in Australia, where in the 1960s and 70s, workers organised in strong and confident unions that were willing to strike won increased real wages. Mass social movements, amongst them the anti-Vietnam War movement, women's liberation, gay liberation, and the land rights and environment movements all made significant gains in this period. But in the 1980s, real wages plummeted as union officials signed on to the Prices and Incomes Accord, selling the fraud to workers that it was possible for unionists to achieve gains through consensus with the bosses without the need to struggle. The Accord, an invention of socialists of the social democratic reformist variety in the Labor Party, was a disaster because what it did was breed a culture of passivity. This meant that Australian workers were ill-prepared for the wave of neoliberalism which swept the globe in the 80s and 90s. This onslaught resulted in a radical upward distribution of wealth. Neoliberalism is based on the theory that if the economy was just relieved of all its regulatory shackles, then things would be rosy. But what neoliberalism actually delivered is massive, massive privatisation of public assets and lower taxes for the wealthy. Nature was something that became increasingly commodified. The disaster of seed patenting resulted in monopolies controlling food supplies. Sweeping deregulation of laws protecting workers attacked collective bargaining and set the scene for the gig economy to move in. With the Australian union movement weakened by the Accord, wages went backwards, while corporate profitability went the other way. It absolutely soared. The union movement has never recovered from the body blow of the policies of the Hawke-Keating era, coupled with the neoliberal assault. The figures tell the story and really help us to understand where it is that we actually are today. Union membership collapsed from 1 out of every 2 workers. Think of that, 50% of all workers were union members in the 1970s, and today that figure is just 12%, concentrated, in particular industries. That is really a shocking collapse. Plus, workers are shackled by the so-called Fair Work Act, the Fair Work Act, which is anything but fair. This century, Australian workers have continued to see real wages fall. Economists refer to the 10 years before the pandemic, when wages for Australian workers flatlined, as the lost decade. Since the pandemic, inflation has outstripped wages, and I'm sure I don't have to tell anybody in this room that life is getting tougher for working class people and workers' wages are going backwards. Australia, like most other parts of the world, is becoming more and more and more unequal. Both the snapshot of the world today and this brief overview of the post-World War II era demonstrate that the need for socialism is compelling. So now to the question, how? How is this to be achieved? Overthrowing capitalism and replacing it with socialism is not something that a minority can accomplish. We need to be clear on that. Now, Marx provided a powerful explanation of who this task will fall to when he famously argued that capitalism creates its own grave diggers. By centralising production, exploiting workers and pushing wages down, there's a logic built into the system which drives the working class, those that Marx called the proletariat, to unite and overthrow capitalism. While revolutionary socialism is currently a minority view, it's essential to convince the majority that capitalism has got to go and that collectively, we and the rest of our class have the power to achieve this. It's our job to audaciously put forward the socialist alternative so that people who are looking to the future are presented with that choice. And when we think about it, what is revolution? Revolution is not really that mysterious. Revolutions are made when the majority of people decide that they are fed up, decide to come together and collectively do something about it. That's what a revolution is, nothing more mysterious than that. Maintaining democratic freedoms in advanced capitalist countries is currently something that is a key battleground. This is definitely the case in Australia, where our protest rights are under sustained attack. The criminalisation in Queensland of From the River to the Sea and Globalise the Intifada is just one example amongst far too many. Our first duty is to defend and extend democratic rights, and using our right to organise and protest to defend our right to protest is an essential task that must unite absolutely all of us. It's also crucial that we move beyond protest. It's not enough just to be saying over and over what we are against. We need to build mass social movements that fight for what we are for. And I would argue that what we are for is socialist feminism. That means we need to explicitly raise anti-capitalist demands. We need to ensure socialists who can highlight capitalism as the source of the problem and popularise socialism get a much greater hearing. All too often, it's revolutionary socialists behind the scenes organising rallies, but reformists dominating the speaker's platform. Greens MPs, with their focus on attracting votes, often get prominent spots on speakers' platforms in Melbourne. And this approach entrenches the idea that capitalism can be reformed to make it work for all of us, and that the answer lies in Parliament. It's important that we actually platform speakers who expose the problems of capitalism, explain it can't be fixed up and made to work in our interests, and stress the need for the working class to unite to collectively challenge capitalism. Now, at this point, though, I do want to stress that revolutionary socialists, like the Freedom Socialist Party, do sometimes participate in electoral politics. So, for example, in 2001, I was the lead Senate candidate on the Socialist Alliance ticket in Victoria. But it's important to be clear that our goal in participating is to engage with working class voters to win them away from parliamentarism to a revolutionary socialist perspective. We're clear that if elected, we would use the platform gained to advance the struggle outside the parliament. We advocate only casting a vote for explicitly anti-capitalist candidates. We do also actively campaign for reforms to improve people's daily lives. But in campaigning for reforms, what we do is we very much stress their temporary nature. So a classic case would be Victoria's bail laws. In 2003, the Stop Deaths in Custody movement, which I'm an active part of, won improved access to bail by showing the direct link between the racist bail laws and the tragic death in custody of Yorta Yorta woman Veronica Nelson. But these welcome reforms didn't last long. How long did they last? 2 years. 2 years. 2 years later, the government was faced with a campaign of law and order hysteria And like they completely roll back what the movement had won 2 years earlier and ran through their tough on bail bill. So if we think about it, in the current era, the ability to win and retain reforms is something that's increasingly fragile. In the Freedom Socialist Party's political resolution, which you can find on our website, socialism.com, called From the Ashes of the Old Century, A Better World's in Birth, a resolution that was adopted at our 1999 convention, that resolution concluded that the era of lasting reforms, the lasting reforms which we were very much able to win immediately after World War II, that era of lasting reforms is over, and that the only answer to the forced march backwards demanded by the international capitalist class is revolution, eliminating that class and the system that supports it. So what I'd like to talk about now, with that goal firmly in our sights, within the movements we pursue the methodology that we learnt from Russian revolutionary leader Leon Trotsky. And in the transitional program written in 1938, Trotsky discusses 3 types of demands. And these 3 types of demands all have an important place in the struggle. The first type of demands are immediate demands. And immediate demands are demands which relate to the everyday struggle. So examples would be something like increase the New Start allowance, or add gender-affirming surgery to the Medicare benefit schedule. So, they're examples of immediate demands. The second type of demands are democratic demands. And democratic demands relate to human rights or civil liberties. So examples would be for the right to wear a keffiyeh at work, or lowering the voting age to 16. So they would all be examples of democratic demands. Now, the third type of demands, which are really, really important demands, are transitional demands. And transitional demands are really, really useful because what they do is they connect with working class people at their existing level of consciousness. They're things that seem eminently reasonable. Like people go, yes, that's what it is that we need. They're readily understood. They raise something that people desperately need, but that capitalism will fail to deliver and simply cannot deliver. So an example would be free quality healthcare for all. Now, a demand like that, it doesn't seem like way out, if you actually say that to people. But if we think about it, the healthcare system with its, ever widening gaps that people have to pay, and the people in our society, living in our society, who don't even have access to Medicare, it's a light years away. So basically, through transitional demands, through fighting for transitional demands, people actually develop a higher level of consciousness through struggling for it, and they come to understand that only when we get rid of the present system can we ensure that all people's healthcare needs are met. Another example, that we would regularly use of a transitional demand would be free, quality, 24-hour childcare, like another example. So transitional demands are crucial because they go beyond reforms and, as I've already discussed, reforms are limited. So capitalism is increasingly unable to deliver the secure jobs, the clean environment, bodily autonomy, quality healthcare, and the social infrastructure that people need. And this makes transitional demands a vital tool as people become increasingly disenchanted with the capitalist status quo. And once they start casting around for solutions, they can find them in all kinds of places. Faced with soaring costs, declining wages, unaffordable housing, and a system that increasingly fails them, some people will join the fight to permanently get rid of capitalism. But others may be drawn to the false solutions of the far right, which is very, very worrying. And in a bid to stave off revolt and advance their own agendas, right-wing forces play on deeply felt fears and prejudices. Their success shows in the number of working and middle-class people abandoning traditional parliamentary parties for the likes of Trump in the US, for the likes of Nigel Farage in the UK, or for Pauline Hanson's One Nation here in Australia. That more and more people are abandoning the mainstream political parties that manage capitalism actually presents a marvellous opportunity for revolutionary socialists, but it also presents a serious risk as some people move right, and we do need to recognise that. And I think there's a placard down here that says no house, no job, like blame capitalism, not migrants. And that really, is a message that we need to get out there. Within right-wing populist movements, fascists are always organising and scapegoating is their method. While immigrants are a prime target now, they also demonise women, queers, trans folk, Jews, Muslims, First Nations and communities of colour. But unlike right-wing populism, fascism's ultimate aim is to completely crush the working class and destroy all democratic rights. The threat posed by both right-wing populism and fascism is something that really does need to be taken seriously. We need to do battle with both we need to do battle with both. And the fight is a connected one between right-wing populism and fascists. To resist right-wing populism, it's vital to build solidarity with those they scapegoat and show that their program, that their political ideas provide no solutions. But to resist fascism, the urgent task is to build unity by forging broad democratic united fronts to defend ourselves. Such bodies need to go way beyond the organised left. They must bring together all of fascism's targets with a particular focus on unionists. Based on clear points of unity, the task of united fronts is to build disciplined mass opposition to fascism and to crush it before it can become a mass movement. And for more on that, I would really highly recommend that people check out the first book that the Freedom Socialist Party published here in Australia. It was published last year, The Fight Against Fascism and the Far Right, Voices from the Front Lines. And right throughout the book, it makes the case for the importance of the United Front. So what's particularly important about United Fronts is that it's a way to unite very, very broad and diverse forces around a clear goal and under working class leadership. And nobody is asked to abandon their ideas, and that is really the beauty of a united front. All parts of the United Front are able to march behind their own banners and raise their own slogans while, focusing on a very, very specific and precise goal. So the Freedom Socialist Party is passionate about unity, as well as working to forge united fronts. We work collaboratively with others in rank and file organising within the trade unions. We also unite with others in mass movements to resist war and militarism, to fight for transgender liberation, to campaign to stop deaths in custody, to demand action on climate change, to advance the struggle for disability justice and refugee rights, as well as defending our right to dissent. So one of the vital things that we bring to the movements is our ideas based on lessons accumulated and synthesised over many decades of collective party struggles. We understand that when it comes to the task of overthrowing capitalism and putting the working class in charge, things can't just be left to chance. History is littered with examples of pre-revolutionary upsurges, such as one of the more recent ones is the Arab Spring, for example, where the chance to make lasting change was frittered away by the lack of revolutionary leadership. James P. Cannon, the founder of Trotskyism in the US, wrote that a political organisation capable of handling such colossal tasks as sweeping away capitalism and starting to construct a new world based on workers' power cannot arise spontaneously or haphazardly. It has to be continuously, consistently and consciously built. It's not only foolish, said Cannon, but fatal to take a lackadaisical attitude towards party building or its problems. So the Freedom Socialist Party is actively building a vanguard party of this type that was first advocated by Lenin. The Russian revolutionary leader knew that a do-your-own-thing type of party with many diverse political ideas within its ranks would not achieve the goal of the working class taking power. The Russian Revolution in 1917 confirmed Lenin's understanding of the need for a vanguard party. Writing in the history of the Russian Revolution, Trotsky explained that Lenin did not impose his plan on the masses. He helped the masses to recognise their own plan, which I think is a really brilliant quote. And in so doing, the Bolsheviks demonstrated concretely that they could lead the workers to victory. The FSP has a clear political program based on revolutionary Marxist theory, the need for the working class to be politically independent. We believe that socialism needs to be global, and so we practice international solidarity. We're revolutionary feminists, and we don't just promote the confidence of people of colour, women, queers and trans people. We acknowledge and promote the leadership of the marginalised majority as the missing link in the process of successful revolution. We recognise the revolutionary power of women and people of colour. We're eco-socialists who are committed to the inalienable right of oppressed nations to self-determination. As a party, we organise based on democratic centralism. Internally, members democratically debate political positions and determine party leadership. Then whatever is decided is carried out by a goal to defeat the right. So, and to wrap up, all party the ingredients that revolutionary feminist program defending democratic rights will be necessary, and the right to dissent, to build socialism, raising transitional demands in unions and mass movements. Work with us, like in any of these ways, in the movements, in united fronts, or, like if you really agree, consider joining to help spread the word that socialism is not only a workable alternative, but the only alternative. Capitalism is toxic and becoming ever more so. It's proved itself incapable of permanent, significant reform, and the idea that there is a gradual parliamentary road to socialism is nothing more than a utopian delusion. If you haven't read it already, check out a copy of Socialist Feminism and the Revolutionary Party. So that's our main brief summary document of what we're about.